Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I am Josh with my co-host Mike. Today we have a ton to cover with a full slate of games for the NFL next week to preview. But before we get to that, we got a couple things first. First, we're going to start off with recapping this past week in college football and talking about the new AP poll, as well as recapping the few games that we haven't talked about from week 7 of the NFL season, that being the Sunday night game and the two Monday night games. But before we get into any of that, we will start with college football. Mike, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, I'll get us started. First game we'll talk about here is the big game, the SEC battle, Georgia versus Texas. This game was in Texas, and for most of the game, Georgia just dominated. Their offense didn't have to do too much. Their Trevor Etienne does get 3 touchdowns on the ground, 87 yards. Carson Beck only throws for 175 and 3 interceptions, but the Georgia defense just took over and absolutely shut down Quinn Ewers. Texas tried to throw Arch Manning out there for a while. That didn't do anything. And on the ground, they were only able to get 29 rushing yards. So just what a performance by Georgia. This was almost a must win for Georgia. They had to win this game. You don't want to go in and have two losses, continuing SEC play. You want to still fight to be in the SEC championship and potentially get a bye in the college football playoff. So huge win for Georgia here as this helps their playoff hopes and possible bye hopes a lot. Next game, we'll stick in the SEC. A lot of big SEC games this week. This was the second one, Tennessee versus Alabama. And again, we see Alabama lose to a college football team from Tennessee. First it was Vandy. Now it's the Volunteers of Tennessee. Um, Offensively, Tennessee just really ran the ball a lot. Dylan Sampson had 139 rushing yards, has 2 touchdowns. Nico didn't have to throw too much. Throws for 194 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Had some throws, especially that interception that really wasn't a great throw at all, but Tennessee stays in the game. They get the lead late, and Alabama was unable to do too much on this Tennessee defense. Tennessee's defense played great. Jalen Miller, ever since I don't know if he was considered the Heisman favorite or not, but ever since he was in the Heisman conversations and considered one of the favorites, has really struggled. We see him here only throw for 239 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. On the ground, he was only able to get 11 yards. He struggled in this game against the Tennessee defense. I've seen a lot of possible Alabama fans clamoring for their backup. I'm trying to think of his name. I think it's Ty Sampson. No. Um, I can't think of the backup's name. Well, a lot of people have been calling
We'll get it for you.
possibly for the backup. I can't find it, but overall, they were unable to really run the ball, couldn't pass great. Ryan Williams has a good day, 8 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown, but not enough. And Tennessee win in the second straight win over Alabama in Tennessee. Don't think they brought the goalpost to the river this time. A big game in the Big Ten. We see Michigan and Illinois. Michigan still has no offense. We've seen it all year. Their inability to have good quarterback play that continues. They're on their third quarterback, Jack Tuttle. He's a veteran. I think he's been in college for 5, 6 years. Can't get it done. Illinois' defense actually shows out this week and plays good. They didn't have to do too much on offense. Only 80 passing yards for Luke Altmaier. They do have 187 yards on the ground, but that Illinois defense, after struggling against Purdue, goes out and puts up a phenomenal performance against Michigan. They couldn't really run the ball, couldn't really pass the ball, and just a huge win for Illinois as they continue to get better and better and are sneaky in the top of the Big Ten here with that 6-1. Um, big or we'll go for an ACC game here. Miami and Louisville. This game was electric, back and forth all game. Cam Ward and the Miami offense are just so good. The Miami defense is another story, but the offense for Miami is just phenomenal. Cam Ward throws for 319 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no picks. Miami runs for 222 yards total. Samuel Brown had a couple of huge plays, had a big 59-yard touchdown for Miami. Their defense wasn't able to do much against Louisville's offense. Louisville looked, I mean, they're 4-3, but they're kind of better than their record shows. They played good in this one, just Miami's offense is kind of almost like the Ravens right now, where it's really hard to stop the offense. The defense you can score on, but trying to keep pace with that offense is very, very challenging. And the last game I'll talk about here is Colorado and Arizona. I talked at the start of this year about how I thought the Colorado team was basically the same team as last year, where their offense is pretty good, but their defense is going to be very bad. They go out here against an Arizona team who I liked at the start of the season a lot, Noah Fafita, and they went out and dominated this game with really no Travis Hunter, especially in the receiving game, didn't play receiver. Shedeur Sanders played well, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. They ran the ball well, but it didn't matter. The Colorado defense played very, very good against this Arizona team and really wasn't close at all. So shout out to Colorado. They're up to 5-2. And if it wasn't for that, late, I wouldn't call it a collapse, but that late struggle against Kansas State, they would be sitting at 6-1 and probably ranked.
No, yeah, I completely agree. It's Ty Simpson is the backup for
Yeah.
Alabama. You were close.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll pick up right where you left off on the Big 12. Yeah, Colorado is really shocking some people as they move their way up the standings here. Unfortunately, this Big 12 is just so competitive. We come on here and we talk about it every single week. I'll start with BYU. They went on Friday night against Oklahoma State, who is a team that people thought would be at the top of this Big 12 going into the year. They have not been that, but Oklahoma State competed in this one. They probably should have won this game at times, but BYU comes in and has a solid second half and wins it. BYU remains undefeated at 7-0. Moving on to the game of the week, Georgia, Texas going into it. Like you said, Georgia came out hot in this one, very similar to what Bama did against them just a few weeks ago, and so much has changed since that game. But Georgia comes out hot in this one. The story of this one going in was, is Texas's defense as good as they've been? We didn't expect them to be as phenomenal as they were in the first 6 games of the year. They played some competition that people were skeptical of, especially looking at that Michigan game playing against a pass defense that's just horrible in Michigan. I'll get to that in a little bit, but Texas defense was unproven against good competition. They played great competition here and they didn't look phenomenal. Like you said, they were solid in the pass game in their secondary, but they just got destroyed on the ground by ETN. And Georgia goes and they pick up a huge win on the road at Texas. When they lost that Bama game, it was like, okay, they're going to probably be fine. Bama's a good team. And then Bama goes and loses a couple, and it's like, oh, well. And because Bama had 2 losses going into this game, this being the night game, it was like, oh, well, that Bama loss doesn't look as good anymore, and that's their only loss. And then they go and they get a huge win against the number one team in the country in Texas. Very impressive. Georgia's going to find themselves at the top of the SEC probably when it's all said and done, at least close to the top. And then Tennessee, a huge win against Bama. These were two teams that were kind of starting to struggle a bit, especially Tennessee. They only have 1 loss as well as Bama had 1 loss going into this game. But Tennessee gets it done. They have another shutout in the first half offensively, which you just cannot have, especially when you're playing against the best competition. But they figure it out in the second half. Nico starts to hit his stride. They kept cutting to his dad every 5 minutes during this game, and Tennessee gets it done against Bama. I don't know the exact stat, but I remember seeing a stat. Bama hasn't had 2 losses in their first 7 games in like since like 01 or 02 or something. So it's been a long time. First year without Nick Saban, and they have a struggling start to the season, but they do still have that win against Georgia, which, as I just spoke of, that is going to be huge for Bama going forward. If we look at Bama's schedule here, let's see who they have coming up. They got Mizzou next week, who that's a good Mizzou team. Then they got to go at LSU, which LSU is a team that definitely can be scrappy. They're in the top 10 now at number 8. But then their last 3 games of the season, they have that SEC gimme game in the middle of the schedule where they play a non-conference team. They got Mercer. I feel like they always play Mercer randomly at some point in the season. They got Mercer. Then they got at Oklahoma, an Oklahoma team that's been struggling, especially at home. And then Auburn, a team that, of course, the Iron Bowl's the Iron Bowl. It's going to be tough to win that game always, but that's not a good team. So I mean, in the words of Ole Miss, they gotta win out most likely to compete and get into the playoff. But I think that's very, very doable. And a win at LSU and a win versus Mizzou at home definitely propels them. I could see them going undefeated the rest of the way, especially if they win those next 2. I think they're gonna win those last 3 for sure. So I'm not counting Bama out yet. They definitely could have won this game. Moving forward, I just spoke of it with LSU. They go and they destroy Arkansas in Arkansas. This Arkansas team's been scrappy all year. We spoke of the teams in the SEC who are scrappy, the Vandies, the Kentuckys, the Arkansas, those teams that are tough to play. Mizzou, even to an extent, but Mizzou's getting a little more national recognition. And LSU goes in there and they dominate them from the start. They go and they put up 34 points on this Arkansas defense. And they're looking like one of the better teams in college football right now. They lost week 1 against USC and they've won 6 straight since. They're on a heater. I look to them to be a dangerous team. Going back to the Big 12 a little bit here with Iowa State, they have a tough game against UCF, but they edge them out. They win by 3 points in that game against UCF. UCF, despite their record being 3-4, they are a scrappy team. UCF had a great start to the year, and they go and they put up 35 on Iowa State, a good Iowa State defense. So I still believe in this Iowa State team. I don't know if I think they're the best team in the Big 12 or not. Like I said, the Big 12 is very confusing, but K-State, BYU, Iowa State, and Colorado are four teams that I think are all very, very good teams. And do I have, yeah, moving on, Kansas State, like I just said, they go into West Virginia, which is always a tough place to play. I know West Virginia is not playing their best ball right now. I get it. But they go into West Virginia and they go and they destroy the Mountaineers. They put up 45 points on them. I love this K-State team. I think they're going to be a dangerous team. I, if I had to make a pick today, who I think is winning the Big 12, it's probably K-State, even though I love BYU. I think it's probably K-State. That win against Colorado is going to prove to be huge, the one you just spoke of, and they're rolling right now.
Yeah, and I'll just get us talking here now about, or well, I got one more game to talk about before I get into the AP poll. Um, the Indiana Hoosiers, who are now 7-0, one of the top teams right now in college football. They were playing Nebraska, a defense that a lot of people thought was very good with Nebraska. And like this Nebraska team, I mean, they beat up on Colorado early in the season. This Nebraska team has looked good. Indiana just had a home game, but they just stomped Nebraska. Nebraska could do nothing offensively. Raiola looked lost. They were saying he needs to, Patrick Mahomes was abandoning him, saying he needs to absolutely change everything about him. But 234 yards and three picks, no touchdowns for Raiola. They couldn't really run the ball, and IU's defense dominated, and offensively they dominated as well. Curtis Rourke, he played well, 189 yards, a touchdown, an interception. They ran the ball very, very well. Justin Ellison had 105 yards, two touchdowns on the ground. They had five touchdowns rushing total, 215 yards on the ground. Just dominated this Nebraska defense. But for the Hoosiers moving forward, Curtis Rourke, I want to say he broke something in his hand and he will miss next week and possibly the week after, which I know is Michigan State.
They got Washington
Um,
next week, game
yeah,
day.
Washington next week. Yeah, college game day is in Indiana, and they're going to be missing their quarterback for that game most likely. I'm pretty sure that's certain. They're hoping he can be back for Michigan State, but it's not likely. So they're up to number 13 on the AP poll, but that is a very scary injury for Indiana. Now I'll get on to some of the AP poll. Like I said, Indiana's up to 13, Notre Dame at 12 right ahead of them. Alabama falls 8 spots all the way to 15. Not shocking. They're the highest two-loss team in the top 25. I think they're the no, Vandy's has two losses as well at 25. So two-loss teams in the top 25. Oregon, after beating up on Purdue on Friday night at Purdue, moves up to number one. Georgia moves up 3 spots to number two. That's pretty much some of the big moves. Army and Navy both still in the top 25 at 23 and 24. They both had dominating wins this week again. I think is it Navy this week that has Notre Dame, or is it Army?
It is, I want to say I think it is Navy. I'll look it up for you, but I'm pretty sure it's Navy.
Yeah, but yeah, both teams were phenomenal. Offensively, they can pass the ball. Bryson Daly for Army, almost, I feel like he should almost be a Heisman candidate. I think he had 6 touchdowns this week against East Carolina. He just needs more recognition, and this team is just, they're fun to watch. They're a good team, and it's just electric.
It is Navy who has Notre Dame next week. That's going to be a very, very interesting game.
Man, that could have been a really cool ESPN game day.
Yeah, they could have. I mean, I get going to IU, but why for Washington? I don't
Yeah,
understand that, especially
no
with
idea.
their quarterback. I mean, I'm nervous for IU without Rook for a while, or at least probably a week, maybe two. But the biggest game of the season for them is Ohio State, second to last week of the year at Ohio State, and he should be back for that game. So as long as they can
Yeah.
tread water, Washington is a very, very beatable team. The Big Ten West teams have not been able to travel great to the regular Big Ten teams and perform. We saw Washington go and play against Michigan and get destroyed by that Michigan team. So I definitely think IU can win that game. I want to check some of the lines for next week because I want to see what that line is and I want to see what the Navy line is. I don't know what time
Look,
either of those games are.
yeah, looking at IU's next 5 games, I feel like they have to win 4 out of the 5. I think they should beat Washington. They should easily beat Purdue. But between, I know I might be being biased here, but Michigan State has a solid offense, and with Rourke out, that could be kind of a trap game. It's in Michigan State. Michigan is a team that they should beat with how bad Michigan is passing the ball. Their offense is atrocious. They should beat Michigan. I would expect Rourke to be back by then, but I mean he's having thumb surgery. It's hard to believe that he would be back in 2.5 weeks that quickly, but Yeah, that Ohio State game at Ohio State's going to be huge, and that's a big game for Ohio State as well.
Definitely. Do you know the lines for Washington, Indiana, or Notre Dame, Navy?
Well, I'm assuming Indiana has to be about 10-point favorites,
6.5 against
six and a
Washington.
half.
And then Navy's at
Hmm.
home. What do you think that line is against Notre Dame?
I'd say Notre Dame's favorites by 5.5,
13. They're
13. Wow.
massive favorites going into
So
that game. So I'm sure the public's
they're
going to be
disrespecting our armed
all
forces.
over Navy on that one. But the Navy Army dream is alive as long as I mean they're going to get to the conference title game most likely. So
They should
these
get there
Notre
with one loss.
exactly, and the Notre Dame game isn't conference for either of them, so it doesn't matter really. I mean, it matters
Yeah.
if we want to have a chance at them both making the playoff, which is still a possibility if they both beat Notre Dame, but I just don't really see that happening. We also didn't mention Illinois just destroys Michigan at home and in Illinois, I should say. Illinois bounces back after a tough loss or almost lost to Purdue last week. It almost felt like a loss with how they played in that game. But looking at the poll a little bit, I like Georgia as the number two team in the country. This is huge for them to get back to that point. They go and they hop Penn State and Ohio State after beating Texas. So that is huge for them. Vandy finds themselves in the poll for the first time in probably a long time. I don't know the last time that they were in the poll, but it's been a while. K-State moves up just one spot. You see Pittsburgh, who Pitt's having a quietly good
Okay.
season. I mean, they're 6-0, but they're find themselves at 19 AP poll. The ACC is just so meh that it's hard for them to really move up at all. You have a team like Clemson who's in there. Does Clemson play them? They do. Yeah, Clemson goes at Pitt on the 16th. So that'll be
That'll
a
probably be
very
the
very
game to go
interesting
to the
game.
ACC championship then.
Definitely. I mean, and Clemson goes to Citadel and South Carolina for their last two games, so they only have three ACC games left. They said at 5-0 that they're one of two teams to play 5 games in the ACC already, so they're ahead of schedule. But you also have SMU in there, who's undefeated in the ACC. So you have a few good teams. Virginia Tech is scrappy as well, but we'll see who comes out of there and gets that automatic bid. But I think that's about all I have here for this. We see Iowa State drops a spot after playing a close game with UCF, but you still have BYU is in there. They move up to 11, and all those teams that I talked about, Iowa State, BYU, K-State, Colorado, still not ranked, but where are they? They didn't get a single vote. If you look at the other receiving votes, I don't know if I've ever seen this few
I
teams.
know there was like five,
There's like barely any teams that got votes. Liberty gets one, Nebraska gets one somehow, and
seven.
Nebraska is 25-point underdogs against Ohio State next week. So they've kind of had a little bit of a fall from grace, but that's about all I have about college from this past week.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, so we'll move on to our three recaps to finish off week 7 of the NFL season. Russell Wilson comes in his first game with the Steelers, and the Steelers put up 37 points, a season high for them against a great Jets defense. They go and they shut the Jets out 24-0 in the second half, which just is unbelievable for the Jets. They are now sitting at 2-5, and as much as I want to talk about the Steelers, I'll be quick with the Steelers. Pickens has a good game. First good first impressive game in my opinion in a long time for him. He's a receiver that I've been very critical of this year, but he looked pretty good with Russ. I mean, we were both very critical about the Steelers' decision to start Russ this week over Justin Fields. Russ did look good, but for the exact reasons that we gave with these other quarterbacks who have come in and played for the first time this year, it's not out of the ordinary that a quarterback comes in first start of the year with no film on him from this team and they go and have a good game. So I'm not going to overreact. There's still a chance that Russell Wilson isn't as good as he looked in this game. There's still a chance that Justin Fields can play for this team, but Steelers are sitting at 5-2 and they're in a very, very good spot, especially in a division where they haven't played the Browns at all yet. So they're going to get probably 2 free wins against the Browns, and they're in a great spot. But talking about the Jets here a little bit, just really, really wild to see them at 2-5. I picked them as I believe the 2 seed in the AFC this year, which is just wild. And now the Bills, although I think they're not the most talented team in the world, and I still am going to continue to be critical of them, are now in the easiest division in football, probably with this Jets team who doesn't have to win out, but they're going to have to win most of their games to end the season here to have a chance to win this division. They probably won't win. And then you have Miami who's getting Tua back. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the Patriots have no chance. So Jets are going for them. Luckily, they're in a division where they can get some wins. So it's not out of the ordinary that they can come out of this and end up being a playoff team. Going to go to the remaining strength of schedule here and see where they sit. Yeah, they sit at 27. So they have an easy schedule coming up. They can definitely win some games. They need to get Brees Hall going. Brees Hall ends up being their leading receiver this game, 6 catches for 103. He was good. He didn't run the ball too well. The Jets haven't run it well all year, but and the Steelers team is really tough to run the ball against. When you look at what was the turnover battle in this game? Yeah, it was 2-0 for the Jets. You see Aaron Rodgers throws a couple picks in this one. Steelers defense is great. I'm not going to hold it too much against the Jets offense in this one because of how good the Steelers defense was, but you can't get shut out in the second half. And a Steelers team that has not been good offensively all year puts up 37 on you. So we'll see what it looks like going forward here for the Jets as they have at New England next week, which should be an easy win for them. But then they got Houston, which is going to be a tough game. So we'll see going forward for them. But it's, of course, been a very disappointing start for them.
Very disappointing start for them, sitting at 2-5. Not really what you expected, especially last year with Zach Wilson. You started out 4-3. Just not what you want to see at all if you're a Jets fan. Aaron Rodgers started this game out playing all right, but in the end, just this offense just didn't have much going for it. The Steelers defense, Alex Highsmith was great. TJ Watt, I mean, he's pretty much always great. They were both very good. They couldn't really run the ball again with Brees Hall. That's been sort of a common issue in games that they lose. And in the past game, Devontae Adams 3 catches for 30 yards in his debut, gets 9 targets. Had a drop early. He wasn't great. Garrett Wilson 5 catches for 61 yards. He has a pass that was put on his basically a shoulder that he couldn't rattle in, led to a Steelers interception and set them up in the red zone, I'm pretty sure. But just the miscues for the Jets are killing them, the little turnovers. And for the Steelers, this is just how they win football games. Their defense plays great. They ran the ball well. This was one of the better games I've seen Najee Harris play. He played very good. 21 carries for 102 yards and a touchdown. It was tough to tackle him on almost every single play. And like you said, George Pickens played pretty well in this game. 5 catches, 111 yards. Russell Wilson was very successful with the little touch passes where he just kind of throws it up there, lets the receiver make a play. And those Steelers receivers in this game, it will be interesting to see if he can continue it through on. I mean, we saw Andy Dalton come in and play good, like you said. When you bench these quarterbacks and put in guys who have no film on them, can they do it throughout the whole season? And 1 week was great for Russell Wilson, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, but we'll see if he can do it again next week.
Okay, moving on here to Ravens beating the Buccaneers 41-31. The Bucks had a couple late touchdowns to make this game look a lot closer than it was, but after going up 10-0, you see the Ravens put up what I believe was 34 straight or 4. I don't know if it was 34 or 41. I can't remember, but
I think it was 34.
yeah, they were unbelievable in this game. We talked about it on the last pod how Lamar needs to be the MVP favorite. He is now sitting at 225 to win the MVP. He is the heaviest favorite I think we've had so far in this race. Derrick Henry didn't get a ton of touches to start this game, but once the second half went, he just was unbelievable. He breaks off a big 81-yard run. I think he had another one for like 30 or 40. He finishes with 169 on 15 carries. He was just so good. Lamar obviously finishes with 5 touchdowns. That's the story for him. We see Zay Flowers go down early in this game. I don't remember if he returned. Did he return in this one?
I thought he did it. I mean, I kept checking fantasy and it never said he was hurt because I had him in a close matchup, but yeah, he didn't really do much.
Yeah, he was banged up early in this one. I saw him wincing on the sideline, so that's never good. But regardless, they have enough weapons. I believe Rashad Bateman has a huge game. I think he'll be huge going forward for them. Mark Andrews is starting to get back into it. He has a couple touchdowns in this one. I think he's up to 3 or 4 on the year now. He's been great. You see Roquan Smith get 18 total tackles, which is just unbelievable in this one. I was very happy that I finally hit an over-under on my best bets where this game just went wildly over, basically locked it up early on in the third quarter in this one. For the Bucks, Baker Mayfield, I'll talk about him a little bit later and who I think he compares to at this point, but I'll talk about that in the preview for their next game. Cade Otton goes 8 for 100 in this one. He was great. Rashad White gets a couple big catches, finishes with 71 yards, 2 touchdowns receiving, and 6 receptions. They were still not able to run the ball crazy well. Sean Tucker was good in his few touches. I think he needs to get more touches. As much I have Rashad White in fantasy, and as much as I don't want that to happen, I think Sean Tucker needs to get more touches for this team. He's electric when he gets the ball. Bucky Irving was not as great in this one as you really expect from him, but Baker, He's going to get you a ton of touchdowns and he's going to throw a decent amount of picks. That's just where he's at this point in his career, but he still finishes with 370 passing yards. We expected that. I know a lot of it was late, but we expected that from him with the weak-ish Ravens secondary. But the story of this one is, of course, Mike Evans hurting his hamstring and then Chris Godwin having a season-ending leg injury. Both of those are huge negatively for the Bucks, of course. Mike Evans, I believe, is going to be out until week 11 or week 12 now, which is just very unfortunate for the Bucks. They lose their two best receivers. They got to find some guys here like Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer, Jalen McMillan who can come back and be solid weapons for them. And now they're at the point where they were sitting pretty good a couple weeks ago, and now they beat this bad Saints team, and then they go and they lose to Baltimore, and now they got Atlanta next week, KC, San Francisco, their next three games. So that's going to be really tough for them. Those three games, they will not have either of their top receivers. So we'll see what it is going forward. It's kind of a mystery for them.
Yeah, losing Chris Godwin for the season and Mike Evans to at least week 11, they said that's just absolutely killer for this Buccaneers team. That was pretty much their strength was their pass offense with Baker Mayfield having those two top weapons. We see Kate Otten step up in this game, 8 catches for 100 yards. He's going to have to do that a lot this season. He's going to have to be probably one of the main targets. They don't have too much depth behind those two guys, so it's going to be interesting to see if anyone can step up or they're just going to have to really focus on the run game. They have three running backs that all are guys who can get touches. Sean Tucker's looked good in his short time so far this year. Bucky Irving's looked great so far this year. And Rashad White hasn't looked great this year, but he was a very solid player for the Buccaneers last year. Their defense, again, lets them down in this when we saw it against the Falcons. Their defense gave up a lot of yards, a lot of points. We see that again with the Ravens. But at the same time, this Ravens offense pretty much any team that has played this Ravens offense so far has had no answer for them at all. You said it, Derrick Henry didn't have a lot of touches through the second and third quarter. The fourth quarter comes around and he just takes over, broke off an 81-yard run, had a couple huge runs in that fourth quarter, finishes with 169 yards rushing. Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, well deserved to be the MVP favorite. Continues to just be the best regular season quarterback by far in the NFL. I don't think there's really anyone close right now. Rashad Bateman has a big game with Zay Flowers being quiet, 4 catches, 121 yards and a touchdown. And we see Mark Andrews get some action. He gets 2 touchdowns in this game, so good for him. The Baltimore defense is still a question mark, and when they're playing some of the top teams, that could be worrying, especially like the Chiefs again. This defense gonna have to step up against a team that has a very good defense, but the Ravens offense right now is just a tank.
Yeah, they've been so good, and they're definitely one of the favorites to come out of the AFC. But moving on here to our final game before we get into the preview, the Cardinals beat the Chargers 17-15. This is a very weird game as we expected, super low scoring. You see Justin Herbert finish with 349 passing yards, which is very deceiving. This offense was not able to move the ball at a high rate in this game, and surprisingly, they go 22 carries for 59 yards. This Cardinals defense, one week they'll look amazing stopping the run, and then the next week they'll get destroyed stopping the run. Kind of expected them to get ripped in this game, and they didn't, with the Chargers having their first game where they couldn't run the ball really all year, but they were still in it. You see the Cardinals offense do just enough to win this one, putting up 17 points. James Conner was huge for them in this one. He goes 19 for 101. The Cardinals passing offense just doesn't look right. Like they haven't looked right since week 2 when they beat the Rams, and then week 1 when they beat the Bills, or when they lost to the Bills. They played Bills and close in that game, but their passing offense just hasn't looked right. You see multiple clips of Marvin Harrison Jr. just being wide open and just not getting the ball. This is a problem for them. They need to figure out this passing offense. They have a great quarterback in Kyler Murray, but they're just not really able to get it done. James Conner is their leading receiver as well as their leading rusher with 51 yards. We see Trey McBride go 5 for 51. Marvin Harrison just 3 for 21 in this one. This was just a very gross game, not something we loved watching, to be honest. But the weirdest play of this game was obviously in the first drive when Kyler Murray throws an interception to a tipped pick to a D lineman, and then he gets stripped by James Conner, who was just the MVP of this game completely. He did it all offensively and defensively for them with that punch out, and then they recover and get the ball back. But I don't have a ton more to say about this game. The Chargers just they need to be able to figure out a passing offense. I know it's crazy to say that when a quarterback throws for 350 yards, but they're not able to move it down the field when they're not running the ball. So we need to see that from them. We need to see them be able to get into the end zone. What was their red zone percentage? Let's see. They were just 0 for 1. Cardinals were 1 for 2 in this one, but yeah, this is a game the Chargers frankly probably should have had. And I think this is one they'll probably regret not being able to put up more points in. But the Cardinals continue to be a mystery for me, and the Chargers are starting to become in that category too.
Yeah, for the Chargers, really just the story of the game was they weren't unable to get the ball in the end zone. Cameron Dicker kicks 5 field goals. That was all 15 of their points. We saw one big throw Justin Herbert make for a big chunk of yards. I want to say, let's see. It says there's only 24 yards. I feel like it was way more than that, but or no, 41 yards. Jalen Reagor gets a big catch, fumbles the ball into the end zone. Big play. That was another one of just the wacky plays. This game had a couple wacky plays in it. He fumbles the ball to the end zone. The Cardinals get the ball and prevent the Chargers from scoring on that possession. That was a huge play as well. Like you said, Herbert was able to get the passing yards, but this offense couldn't move the ball. J.K. Dobbins struggles on the ground, only 2.9 yards per carry. We see Will Disley be their leading receiver, 8 catches for 81 yards. This Chargers team, they have the talent defensively to really win games, but offensively, they still need to get Herbert some weapons. Lad McConkey's kind of been the main guy. He gets 5 catches for 46 in this game, but overall, he needs more receiving weapons. For the Cardinals, this was a win you kind of needed. You're sitting at 3-4 now. You're kind of back in it. Kyler Murray doesn't pass the ball great, but for their second straight win, he gets a big run that puts him back in position. 44-yard touchdown run. James Conner was phenomenal, especially in the last drive to get him in field goal range. Gets a big play. He was great in the receiving game, and I agree. I think they need to get the ball to Marvin Harrison more. You'd use the top draft pick on the guy. You just need to start giving him more and more targets. I've seen people complaining about offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, that he needs to draw up more plays for Marvin Harrison and start playing towards Kyler Murray's strengths. So we'll see if Marvin can start getting the ball more.
Okay, moving on here to our week 8 NFL preview. There are no bye weeks this week, so we have a full slate of 16 games to discuss. We will start with, and that does include the two teams that are coming from London that are both not taking their
Yeah,
bye weeks this week. So that's
crazy.
wild. But um, starting with Thursday Night Football, Vikings at Rams. It's a short week here for the Vikings after playing a huge game versus the Lions. Short week for the Rams as well, but that was a really, really tough and important game for the Vikings. And coming off of an emotionally draining game like that and then having to go travel all the way to LA and play on Thursday night is never great. And it definitely raises some skepticism for them. Cooper Kupp should be back for the Rams. He's also huge in trade discussions right now. A lot of teams want in on him. Maybe he's available. Same thing with I saw one about Stafford. I don't really believe that
I think that was
personally.
a Dove Kleiman one. So
It wasn't Dove Cleveland. It was another guy. I can't remember his
oh, I saw
name.
I saw that the one that I saw was Dove Kleiman, which I
No,
think sold his account, so it's not actually him.
No, yeah, he sold his account like way before the season. Yeah, it's been a different guy for a while. But Dove Cleveland, I don't think existed as a person before. So I think Dove Cleveland has always been a made up guy. But yeah, this is a Cup should be back for the Rams, hopefully in this one. The Rams O line though is still so beat up, and that's just so brutal to have when you're playing against such an aggressive pass rush that the Vikings have. They're gonna be able to feast on this Rams O line the whole game and be all over Stafford for the majority. The Rams' run defense has not been great this year. Aaron Jones should be able to get going early and often in this one. The Rams are at their best, or the Vikings are at their best when they're running the ball and they don't force Darnold to have to do everything. Jones did have a big run versus the Lions last week, but overall he wasn't phenomenal in that game. He was stuffed at the line of scrimmage a lot, but the Lions' run defense is unlike many other teams in the league, and the Rams do not have that. So I think that Aaron Jones will be able to get going. The Vikings have been great in the red zone this year. They've been 68%. That's going to come huge in this game against the Rams' red zone defense that has not been great this year. Every team statistically so far this year has lost after playing the Detroit Lions. We don't know. I guess the verdict's still out on the Cowboys because they had a bye week, but I don't think they're going to win this week either. Regardless, every team has lost after playing the Lions, so that is a trend that maybe you can follow. And the Vikings do have to go to LA on a short week, but the Vikings just match up too well here for me, and I'm going to have to take him at -2.5.
Yeah, I kind of feel pretty much the same way. I saw that every team that has played the Lions has lost the next week, and the losses were by a pretty high margin as well. The Lions seem to just they punish teams. Sam Darnold looked great last week. They ran the ball pretty well with Aaron Jones as well. I think they're going to be able to move the ball on the Rams defense. The good thing for the Rams, like you said, they get Cooper Kupp back. They're taking Puka Nacua off IR, so he probably won't be back this week, but he could potentially be back next week. I think if the Rams win this game, they're probably going to lean more towards trying to make a run for the playoffs, but a loss here could hurt that. Um, I go back and forth on this one, but I just think the Vikings match up well. I think their defense is going to play well regardless. We saw they were played solid last week against the Lions, but their defense is going to play well. I think Justin Jefferson is going to show up in prime time and have a big game. So I got the Vikings -2.5.
Okay, moving on here to Titans at the aforementioned Detroit Lions. Jameson Williams is suspended 2 games, but is he suspended 2 games? We don't know yet. The league transactions came in today and it has not been on the list. The NFL hasn't announced anything. It's only just been reported. I'm not going to say I am believing the hype that there's a chance he isn't suspended, but 2 game suspensions are very weird. We don't know what it was for. It could be just something minor. So at this point, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say they won't have JMO, but it hasn't been announced yet, and that's very weird in my opinion that that hasn't been put on that transactions list. But assuming that he won't be playing in this game, the Lions weapons, we started the season being like, okay, the Lions, do they have a wide receiver 2, 3, 4? And JMO's been great for them, but even without JMO, Khalif Raymond has been really good when he's gotten looks the past 2 weeks. They've made it Ben Johnson has made it a point to get the ball to Khalif Raymond. He did it in the Cowboys game. He did it in the Vikings game. Maybe they knew something was up with JMO and they had to see if they can get Khalif Raymond going, and they could. Tim Patrick's also been great for the Lions as a blocker, as a pass catcher. He's solid. This is a chance for Sam Laporta to start getting some more targets. He just has not been targeted really much at all this season because the ball has just been all over the place. And it's not, I wouldn't put that on him completely, but the Lions just are getting to their first and second reads often, and they haven't needed to get him the ball. So this is a point where maybe they will need him to get the ball. Maybe not against the Titans, but definitely next week against the Packers if they don't have a Jameson Williams. But focusing on this game, the Lions are top four in both pass and rushing offense, and I believe they are graded the best offensive team in football at this point. I don't know with the Ravens coming in with a great performance last night. It might be the Ravens, but it's there. In my opinion, there's a gap after the Lions and the Ravens for the next best offensive team this year. The Titans have had a statistically good defense, but they played multiple bad offensive teams to start the year here. And I'm not going to go out and say the Titans have a dominant defensive unit because when they face good teams, those teams have been able to score, whether it was the Bills or who else put up a ton of points on them. I can't remember who else did, but they when they played good offensive teams, they haven't been able to get stops. Whether it's Mason Rudolph or Will Levis, the Titans' offense is just horrible. They can't get anything going in the pass game. The Lions force a ton of tight window throws. That's going to be really tough for any bad quarterback, and I think they are at where we sit right now. They are both bad quarterbacks. Titans' run game has been their only bright spot offensively, but you just can't run it against this Lions team. So I don't know where they're going to be able to find points. The Lions are 5-1 against the spread this year. They tend to try to run up the score. If the Titans can force turnovers in the pass game, they can definitely compete. But Goff is just on fire right now, and it's been really hard to stop him. This is the biggest spread of the year, as we hinted at in the last episode. I hope for them it's not a trap game with Green Bay coming up and Houston, 2 road games for them, smashed in between this game where they just played in Minnesota. But I can't not take the Lions here. I'm going to take the Lions -11. There's a world where the Lions shut them out.
Yeah, that's one of my only concerns is with Green Bay and Houston coming up next week. This could be a trap game. But if this was a Mike Vrabel-led Titans team, I think they'd be able to keep this game close. But right now, I can't trust Brian Callahan and this Titans team at all. I think the Lions are going to outmuscle them in the trenches, obviously, dominate in the trenches, have a big game running the ball again as well. The Titans were unable to get the ball last week to the weapons offensively. I think the Lions defense could have a big day. We've seen them kind of get better and better as the season's going on. The Titans run defense has given up 105 yards per game, but they haven't gone up, which is pretty good, but they haven't gone up against a rushing attack like the Lions. I think that the Lions are going to have a big game running the ball again with whether it's Gibbs or if Montgomery's completely healthy. I just think the Lions are able to cover 11 points. I didn't trust myself last week. They were playing the Bills. I saw the big spread and I switched my pick. I'm gonna trust it this week. I think the run's gonna open the pass game for the Lions and they're gonna be able to pass or run or do whatever they want offensively.
Okay, moving on here to Colts at Texans. This is a huge game for the AFC South, as we teased in the last episode. Colts should have Jonathan Taylor back. That's huge for Anthony Richardson, and it's huge for their offense. They need to lean heavy on him. When they're able to lean heavy on him, they take so much pressure off Anthony Richardson. We've said it over and over. Colts have a very questionable pass game with Anthony Richardson. Like I said, he hasn't been over 50% yet on the year passing, and the Texans defense has been really good, especially in the secondary. But the Texans have a ton of injuries. They don't have Lassiter, they don't have Ward, they don't have Aziz Al-Shaair. Who knows if either or any of those three guys will be able to play in this game. I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to be amazing, even against a beat up defense here, but he has to just not turn the ball over. The incompletions are going to happen. That's just where he is right now at this point in his career, and it's a good defense in Houston. As we've said, their pass rush is really, really good, but the Colts O-line is solid. The Texans' best games are when they run it very well. They're going to run it probably pretty well against Indy. Indy's run defense has been pretty hard to uh pretty hard to grade. They've been great in some games, they've been bad in other games. They're getting Defoe back this week, as you said, so that's huge for them. The Colts are 9-2-1 in Houston since 2013. They've been very good in that stadium. I'm gonna rock with the Colts in the big spread here. I think they're gonna be able to compete in this game, and if Anthony Richardson can just be a little bit more efficient, they can win this game. So I'm gonna take the Colts plus the points of 5.5.
Yeah, the Colts tend to win these games when they're played in Houston. We saw last year they dominated, especially early with Anthony Richardson. Their secondary has been better in these last couple weeks, especially than I expected. Sam Womack's been a great addition to the secondary. Jalen Jones has been solid. They haven't been playing great competition, but they need to just continue to show that they are able to slow down teams' passing offense. Yeah, their run defense is completely one week it looks good. I mean, it goes almost drive to drive where the Colts have the run defense look great on one drive where they stuff two, three plays, but then the next drive they just give up a 50-yard run. It's really hard to understand. The last couple times the Colts have played the Texans, Nico Collins has went off against the Colts. He's still on IR, so he will miss this game. That is big for the Colts. Hopefully they're able to get back Jonathan Taylor and possibly DeForest Buckner. With everything at stake in this game, I mean, winner would kind of have an advantage. I mean, the Texans already won the first game, so this is almost a must-win for the Colts to try to fight for the division lead. Uh, Joe Mixon was great in that Week 1 game. The Texans offense ran all over the Colts. I think if the Colts run defense can just hold up enough, I think they'll be able to maybe slow down CJ Stroud in the passing offense, which has struggled in recent weeks. And I think Anthony Richardson could. He looked great in Week 1 against the Texans. That's maybe his best game of the year still. Maybe he can rekindle that magic, have a good game, and I think the Colts cover 5.5 or 6, whatever it is right now.
Yeah, I believe it's a five. It was at 5.5 when I looked earlier. Yeah, it's still 5.5. So
Okay,
I still like the points anyways.
I
But
think that's FanDuel. It's at 6, so yeah, 5.5.
gotcha. But moving on here to Packers at Jaguars. The Jaguars, like I said, elected to not take their bye week coming back from London. They got a win in London, but it was against a pretty bad New England team, so I'm not putting too much stock in that. They ran it very well in that game, and that's the key for their offense. Their pass defense is just not a good unit. Jordan Love should feast in this game. Green Bay has run it well all year, but the Jags' run defense has surprisingly been pretty solid despite going down in so many games. Their run defense has been very solid on the year. The ball's going to be in Jordan Love's hands for most of this game, I believe. He just needs to not turn it over too much. He leads the NFL in touchdowns and interceptions despite playing two less games than everybody else. He's been just full Brett Favre mode, Jameis Winston mode, and that's who I compare to Baker Mayfield's been the same way this year. I said last week that Jacksonville's offense can only succeed when they run it well. Green Bay, though, has defended the run super well all year. I could see Green Bay going into Jacksonville and blowing out the Jags in this game. I really can. I think they're a much better team, and I think this is a great matchup for Green Bay. If they can run it well, they're going to absolutely run the Jags out of the building. But even if they can't, I think they still have a great game. So I'm going to take Green Bay minus 4.5 here.
Yeah, we've seen Green Bay's passing offense be very good with Jordan Love, especially 15 touchdowns. He does have 8 interceptions. He's got that gunslinger mentality. But I think the Packers are going to be able to throw all over this Jags secondary. Jags are coming back from London. They were there 2 weeks straight, but they do get a home game, so that does make it a little bit better. Trevor Lawrence looked solid last week, but he still has to prove it. The Packers defense has been pretty good in recent weeks. Um, if the Jags can win this game, I'd say their season's not over for them. But from what I've seen this season, I don't think I can predict them to win this game, which pretty much would put their season as over. So I am going to go and take the Packers as favorites. The Jags' run defense has been solid, so maybe they can slow down that. But I think Jordan Love's going to be able to pass all over this Jags secondary and dominate.
I agree. Moving on here to Ravens at Browns. The Browns now have a new quarterback at the helm with Jameis probably. We're hoping it's Jameis. It's hard to really tell which way they're going to go in this one with Jameis being their emergency quarterback going into last game, and now he's their starting quarterback. But we will see. Hopefully they decide to go with Jameis and not DTR. I don't. Do we know if DTR is healthy after going out in that last
No, I
game?
don't know.
It's hard to tell. It's too early in the week. But moving on for this game, the Ravens give up the most passing yards per game. So maybe the Browns find some success in this one, but the Ravens have been up by so much in so many games that that stat is a little bit inflated. Although I do not fully believe in this Ravens secondary. The Ravens are fourth in sacks so far. They should dominate this Browns offensive line. The Browns defense is playing better these past few games. They've been pretty solid over the past 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe they give the Ravens some trouble, but the Ravens offense has just been so good. Like I said, them and the Lions are just easily the top two offenses. Lamar's playing out of his mind coming off a 5 touchdown game. I just trust him about just about anybody who he's playing against. I trust him. The only thing that scares me here about the spread is maybe some sort of backdoor cover. We saw against Tampa, they didn't cover. Tampa didn't cover in that game, but they did put up some points late after the Ravens going up by a ton. So I'm a little bit worried about backdoor covers. We've seen the Ravens blow a lot of leads in the past few years, but I'm reluctantly going to take the Ravens here. I think they're one of the best 3 to 4 teams in the league.
Yeah, and speaking on that backdoor cover, we saw that last year the Ravens were up by 14 and the Browns were able to come back and steal the win in the game in Cleveland. I think that was Deshaun Watson's last game of the season before he was out for the rest of the year. But I just trust I've been riding the Ravens a lot recently. I've picked them in best bets multiple weeks. I can't go against them now at -9.5. Derrick Henry's having maybe his best, almost his best season somehow to date in this. I think he's what, 28, 29. Leads the NFL in rushing yards at 704. He currently has a career high 5.9 yards per carry. The rush offense for the Ravens has been pretty much unstoppable. Defensively, like you said, they've struggled against the pass, but they have had some big leads and just had to kind of play. And we saw it against the Cowboys where they just kind of played safe, let them kind of come back. We saw it last week against the Buccaneers. So I think the Ravens offense right now is the best unit in all of football all around. I'm going to continue to ride that. I would expect Jameis. It does look like Thompson Robinson could miss a couple weeks. They did sign Bailey Zappi,
Yeah,
so
so
I'd
that.
assume that Jameis starts. And while I love Jameis, this Ravens team just has too much going right now. Nick Chubb, 1 week back, maybe has his legs under him more. But I like the Ravens -9.5.
I could even convince myself that they'll cover though, because like the Ravens secondary, I don't think is great. And we said when these quarterbacks come in with no film, it's really hard to stop them. But the Browns offensive line is so bad right now, and I just don't see how they overcome that against this
Yeah,
Ravens front seven.
and
But
the Ravens offense is just too good.
yeah, they're gonna put up a ton of points regardless of what the Browns do offensively. But moving on here to Jets at Patriots. The Jets open as a huge favorite, as a huge road favorite, despite being 2-5 against the spread this year. The Jets really struggled versus a good defense in Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. Their defense wasn't great versus Pittsburgh, but I still think they're a great unit. I think that was kind of a fluky game with Russ coming in for the Jets defense. I just don't think they're going to be as bad as they were in that game moving forward. It's going to be a tough defense for a rookie quarterback and Drake May to go against. I think he's going to probably struggle against this Jets team. He'll probably have some decent stats. Maybe he throws a pick or two, but maybe he goes in the end zone twice and throws for 200 and 300 yards. I don't know, but I think he will be okay, but it's going to be tough for him against this defense. New England's defense, though, has been really bad the past few weeks. The Jets offense should look a lot better. We saw a Jags offense that's been dead for majority of the season look really good against this New England defense. So I could see the Jets offense having a similar fate here. The Jets pass defense is great and their run defense is okay, but the Pats have just not been able to run it very well at all. The Jets have been starting to run it better a little bit. It wasn't great last week, but they were playing against a good run defense. I think they're going to be able to run it a little bit better in this game. I hate to say it, but I just cannot take. I can't take New England. I can't do it. I know the Jets. I mean, I don't have the stats, but I would assume I've gotten burned on almost every time I pick the Jets this year. But I'm still gonna rock with them, even though they're 7 point favorites, even though they're on the road. I just don't think this New England team really has the chops.
Yeah, the way you feel about the Jets is kind of how I feel about the Patriots. Every time I pick them, it seems to not go well for me. They've been a dead team ever since that week 2 game against the Seahawks. Drake May has been a pretty good story for them so far this year. He's looked solid in his first 2 starts. This is a tough Jets defense, but their secondary is pretty banged up. They're missing a lot of guys back there, so maybe he's able to throw the ball kind of well against them. They are the Jets defense is second against the pass with only 164.7 yards per game given up so far. They're gonna make Drake May earn it for the Jets. They kind of need to get this first win under them to start running the table. I think they do win this game. Their offense has been better in recent weeks. It struggled. They didn't have against the Steelers, but up until that, they looked like they were getting better and better. They do get Hassan Reddick back in the facility, so maybe he will start playing soon. That would help improve their pass rush immediately and could kind of change my pick on this game, but their secondary's kind of banged up. They're going to need to get to the QB. If Hassan Reddick plays, I could maybe see the Jets covering, but I'm going to reluctantly pick the Patriots in the spread again at +7.5 or whatever it is, +7,
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it before.
+7.
I hate almost every single
Yeah,
line this week.
I
Like
completely agree.
I have like a couple picks that I'm confident in, but not even really that, to be honest. But moving on here to Eagles at Bengals, two teams with a ton of talent that have really just underperformed to start the season here. I know the Eagles are 4-2, but they have underperformed. They have very similar strengths and weaknesses. It's two pretty bad secondaries. The Bengals pass offense was bad last week, but I think they're going to feast on this Eagles secondary. I think it's going to be a very good game for them passing the ball. I think we see Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both have two huge games. Although they don't run the ball well, I think they're going to really be able to let it fly against the Eagles secondary. Both teams' offensive lines have been giving up sacks, and both teams have not been getting a ton of pressure. So we'll see what gives there. I think whichever team is able to get to the opposing quarterback easier will be the team that wins this game. The Bengals' biggest weakness is that secondary that they have, but I just do not trust Jalen Hurts needing to perform. If you have a opportunity, and I know the Bengals' run defense isn't great either, so the Eagles are going to need to be able to run the ball, and I think they will be able to run the ball fairly easily in this game. But I just don't trust if you have to put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands, and I think at times they might in this game. Philly's defense has been great in the red zone. If they can continue to get stops, they'll be in a good spot. The key to victory for the Eagles, get to Joe Burrow, run the ball, and stop the Bengals in the red zone. I think those are three things they can absolutely do. But with that being said, I still like the Bengals at home here, and I'm going to take the Bengals -2.5.
Yeah, this is a very interesting game. This is just a line overall that I just have no idea. Both teams are coming over back-to-back wins against bad teams. Eagles beat up on the Browns and the Giants. The Bengals are coming off wins against the Giants and the Browns as well. So just rough teams there. Eagles need to continue to get the ball to Saquon Barkley. He needs to become their identity. He was great last week. They need that to continue. They have all of their offensive weapons right now with Saquon, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith. This is a chance for them to really get going. Their pass rush in the last 2 weeks has been pretty good. They had a slow start. They've had 13 sacks in the last 2 games. Their defense is getting better and better every week, which is good for them. For the Bengals, their offense, which was great at the start of the season, has started to slow down and quiet off in the past couple weeks, which has been different because their defense, which was pretty bad at the start of the season, has been pretty good the last 2 weeks. So that's really not what we expect from them. If the Bengals want to win this game, they're gonna have to put all three phases of the game together to beat up an Eagles team. Both teams need to continue to win games to stay in the playoff hunt and division hunt. Um, I'm going back and forth on this one. I have no idea because I kind of view these teams almost as the exact same.
Me as well,
Uh,
honestly.
yeah, I'm gonna go against the general public and go Bengals -2.5.
Wow, the public's on the Eagles, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, I guess record, but moving on here to Cardinals at Dolphins this is a very interesting game. Tua is back, and this game is just impossible to pick, honestly. The Cardinals are a complete mystery. The Dolphins are a mystery with their quarterback coming back. The Cardinals offense hasn't looked good in weeks, like we said earlier. Miami has given up the least passing yards per game of any team. Their pass defense has been pretty good. It's been a unit that has kept them in some of these games without their quarterback, but they just haven't been able to score at all, and that's why they've been losing so much. The Cardinals have to run the ball to win this one. We saw how effective James Conner was against the Chargers and how whenever he's good, the Cardinals offense has a little bit of life with their passing offense being so bad. I don't know what to believe about this offense with Tua's first game back. The offense as a whole has just been so bad. They haven't even been able to run the ball really at all. And you got Tua coming in first game from a concussion, coming back off the IR. It's hard to imagine he's going to go in there and the Dolphins offense is going to look right back to normal, but maybe they do. I expect this to be a very low scoring game. It's a far trip to Miami for the Cardinals. Miami tends to do well at home versus West Coast teams historically. This line is a little confusing with the Dolphins as favorites, but I like the Dolphins here at -3.
Yeah, again, I have no idea which one to go on this one. Cardinals coming off of a gritty win against the Chargers. When they can run the ball, they can be very successful, whether it's James Conner or Kyler Murray. When they can run the ball, that's huge. Their defense has been up and down this season. If their defense can put in a good performance, I can see this game being very low scoring as well. The Dolphins have scored just 40 points since Tua left 4 games ago, which is just absolutely crazy. Huntley has went down with a shoulder. Um, Huntley went down with a shoulder injury. They should get Tua back for this one. Absolutely cannot have Tim Boyle play. Uh, I saw that teams are 0-10 when Tim Boyle throws at least one pass, which is
Lions got a few of those.
yeah, Lions are a few of those. I think the worst ever was Zach Mettenberger, and he was 0-13. So
Jeez.
that's a Titans legend. But Dolphins have had the best pass defense in the NFL so far this season at only 154.4 yards per game. I think that's going to be huge. The Cardinals are going to have to run the ball if they want to win, and they've been just too up and down with it. I think the Dolphins could get a huge boost with Tua coming back, although I don't know how much he's been practicing, but I am going to go with Dolphins -3 as well.
Okay, moving on here to the second half of the preview, starting with the Falcons at Bucks. Both teams are coming off embarrassing games. Falcons getting blown out at home by the Seahawks, and then the Bucks getting blown out at home by the Ravens. Although the game only ended 10 points, they got blown out in that game. Atlanta is a pass first team. They should be able to pass all over this Bucks secondary that struggled a ton. The Bucks are now down both top receivers, like we said. The Falcons secondary should have a field day against this team. I expect a low amount of running for Atlanta in this game. Tampa Bay's run defense is pretty solid. Anytime you have Vita Vea in there, you're going to be solid. Mayfield, like I said, is starting to remind me of Jordan Love a little bit. A lot of touchdowns, a lot of interceptions. He's reckless at times, but he's also very effective. The Bucks have started to run the ball fairly well. Atlanta's run defense hasn't been great. I think this is a game where we see the Bucks run the ball very well. Tampa Bay pretty good in the red zone offensively and defensively, which are just two huge stats that you can't overlook. I've taken so many road favorites already, and I hate doing that. So I'm gonna take the Bucks plus 2.5 here, and I wouldn't be shocked to see this line move to like 3 or 3.5.
Yeah, we saw in the first matchup between these two teams, Kirk Cousins threw for 509 yards. He played phenomenal in that game. The Falcons offensively have the advantage, I think, with that. We saw last week the Buccaneers give up a ton of yards again. Over the past 3 weeks, the Buccaneers have given up at least 500 yards twice. The game against the Falcons and then last week against the Ravens. They're struggling in that department. They have to be able to slow down the pass. Um, right now, offensively for the Buccaneers, I am worried losing Godwin and Evans. They have nobody on their roster who has gotten over 175 receiving yards this season outside of those two, so they need someone to step up. And with me being uncertain about that, I am going to have to pick Falcons -2.5 in this one. If the Bucks want to win, they're going to have to run the ball. They did average 6.15 yards per rush in the first meeting, so they're going to have to continue that. But I think the Falcons are coming off of a disappointing loss, and they're going to come out and be and win a big game and take 2 games on the Buccaneers down in that division.
Okay, moving on here to Bills at Seahawks. The Bills have a far trip to Seattle for this game. DK is probably out for Seattle. We don't know yet, but they have so many weapons that I don't think that's that big of a deal for them. The Bills defense, like I said, a very questionable unit in the run and the pass. Geno and the Seahawks should find success in this one. They just have to make sure that they keep Geno away from the pressure. When he gets a lot of pressure, he's not as good, but if they can protect him, they're going to be solid in this one. Seattle has had a very, very good pass rush so far. It's been one of their strengths. They're going to be able to get to Allen. The biggest thing for Seattle is stopping the run. If they can stop the run in this game against James Cook and the Bills, who are a team that sometimes they run it well, sometimes they run it very poorly, they could definitely fluster the Bills. I love this Seattle defense when they're healthy, and they are healthy right now. They're a very good unit. I think they're one of the more underrated defenses in football right now. The keys for Seattle are just getting to Josh Allen and stopping the run. And if they do those two things, they're going to be in a good spot. even without DK, I like Seattle to compete in this game at home. Lumen Field's always a tough place to play. I know they haven't been great there this year, but it's a tough place to play. The Bills have a far way to travel. I think they at least compete in this game. So I'm going to take Seattle +3.
Yeah, and on top of that, Buffalo has been very bad on the road so far this season. Josh Allen's completion percentage is down about 20% on the road. Only 4 touchdowns, still 0 picks. But opposed to home games where it's 8 touchdowns and 0 picks. They have played only 3 games at home, 4 games on the road. He's struggled a little bit on the road. Uh, Obviously this season he's been great with 18 or he threw 18 interceptions last season. Right now he's still at 0. So that is big for him. I think that does change in this game though. I think the Seahawks are going to get an interception. Last week was the best game we've seen from the Seahawks all season. They slowed down a Falcons offense that had been on fire recently. Um, and offensively for the Seahawks, they've been able to pass the ball very well on pretty much everybody they go against. I think they're going to pass the ball well against the Bills. I think if they get Kenneth Walker going in the run game, that could be huge for them and really open up everything. And I think that's going to happen. I think the Seahawks are going to win this game, and I'm picking them +3.
All right, moving on here to Saints at Chargers. Chargers are the biggest favorites. They will probably be all year in this game at 7-point favorites. They had a game last week, yesterday, as we just spoke about, where they had to pass it, and we saw what happened there. A ton of yards, but no points to show for it. New Orleans has been horrible against the run. The Chargers should dominate them in that category. We thought they were going to do that last week against the Cardinals, but I think they definitely do it at home here against New Orleans. The Chargers defense is legit in all facets. They should give this beat up Saints offense a ton of trouble. The Chargers are number 9 against the run, number 9 against the pass defensively. I don't know where the Saints offense is going to find success without either of their star wide receivers and without their quarterback. I think this is going to end up being a very gross, low scoring game. The Saints' only chance in this one is if they force some turnovers and put Rattler in great spots. We saw at times they did that against the Bucks and they were able to put up a ton of points that way, but you just cannot bet on that. It's just it's a hard thing to bet on. And I hate this line so much. This is the point where every line from here on out I hate
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna reluctantly take the Chargers at -7, I guess.
Yeah, right now I just can't trust the Chargers offense to do too much, but the Saints offense has been worse. Derek Carr is questionable for this game, so there's a chance he plays, but most likely it will be Spencer Rattler. They will not have Rashid Shaheed. He's out for the season. Chris Olave has a concussion still. It'll be interesting to see if he's back. He's one of those guys who's had so many concussions so far in his career. I mean, Tua gets all the attention for Tua's concussion, but Olave's had a lot of bad ones too as well, where he goes unconscious and just doesn't look good at all. He's a guy who should be wearing a Guardian cap. I know we saw Tua say it's a personal choice, but
Yeah.
I think both of them just should do it just to be safe. I mean, I think it's beneficial to your team as well. It's not just for you, it's for your team. Just you have to stay healthy. But Saints defense has struggled recently. They're giving up 146 yards per game rushing. And we know the Chargers are probably going to want to run the ball, especially after last week where they struggled to do that. I think J.K. Dobbins could have a bounce back week, have another big game. They need just to continue to keep Herbert just being efficient. He hasn't really made too many mistakes this season. I'd like to see Lad McConkey take another step forward and maybe become the wide receiver one, but I think the Chargers just play their game. They get another just normal Harbaugh run the game when their defense has been phenomenal this season, the fewest points per game in the NFL at only 13.8. And so I'm going to reluctantly go with Chargers -7. I think their defense is just going to shut down the Saints offense.
And if Derek Carr and or Olave plays, this line could definitely move.
Oh,
But
100%. Yeah.
I'm assuming with -7 that Vegas is assuming that they're both not playing. But
Yeah.
moving on here to Chiefs at Raiders, and actually before that, I've noticed this might be the most travel week of the season. Like there's
Yeah,
so
there's a
many
lot of
teams
teams
that are
involved.
traveling, and even like the
If
two
you
London
count,
teams.
yeah, so you could count Jacksonville traveling across the
Yeah,
ocean.
exactly, and New England. But moving on here to Chiefs at Raiders. Chiefs are huge road favorites here. Chiefs' run defense has been stellar all year. The Raiders just can't run the ball versus anybody. Minshew should be out for the Raiders, or should be out there for the Raiders. I should say he's playing in this one. He just hasn't been good all year. The Chiefs' Achilles heels offensively have been their turnovers and their red zone offense. Vegas is 21st in red zone defense and 30th in takeaways this year. So I see the Chiefs' biggest weakness is becoming strengths in this game. Vegas pass defense has been solid statistically, but they've been down by so much that that's a little bit deceiving. I hate this line too because the Chiefs just don't blow teams out, but I can't take the Raiders here. I think the Chiefs match up pretty well, and I think we see maybe the Chiefs have their best game of the season here.
Yeah, I could see that as well. They're the last unbeaten team in the NFL. Mahomes is obviously an elite quarterback, maybe the best in the league. But when Mahomes is in a dome, he's an even better QB. Uh, this was at this before this season, so the stats were didn't count some of the games he's played, and they haven't lost, so the record's still undefeated. But he's 10-0 when he plays in a dome stadium. 3,145 passing yards, 23 touchdowns to just two interceptions. We saw in the Super Bowl he played at Allegiant Stadium, dominated with 333 yards and two touchdowns. I think Mahomes could have a big game against this Raiders defense. Kareem Hunt, the Raiders have been solid against the run, but Kareem Hunt recently has looked pretty good. And right now, I just can't trust anything this Raiders team and Antonio Pierce really is doing. Last year, we saw AP do a great job of. They were one of the least penalized teams in football. He was making just a lot of the right choices on fourth downs and all that stuff. But recently that has changed. We saw last week they kicked a field goal. They were losing by 8 with about 3 or 4 minutes left. They kick a field goal to make it a 5-point game. When you're in the red zone already, that just makes no sense to me. You're just making it a two field goal game. You're just playing to get the ball back. It was only like a 4th and 4 too. I just don't trust Antonio Pierce right now. I think Andy Reid's going to have another big game. The Raiders haven't been able to run the ball all season. We've seen that. The Chiefs are a phenomenal run defense. This game's going to be in Aiden O'Connell's hands, and with his top weapon being Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, who's been great this season, I just don't see them getting it done against this Chiefs defense or keep it close at all. So I'm gonna go Chiefs -10.
Okay, moving on here to Panthers at Broncos. We just got notified that Andy Dalton was in a car accident. I think he's okay. They made it seem like he was okay, but he did get into a car accident today. Who knows what the deal with that will be? But that we just got that news like 10 minutes ago. So
Yeah.
another really disgusting game here with the Panthers and the Broncos. This is this is the most Thursday night football game I've ever seen. Like this is the perfect Thursday night football game, but it's on Sunday at 4:25. The Broncos defense has been stellar all year. Their offense has been up and down, but they've been pretty good offensively against bad defensive teams. We saw it last week against the Saints, who sometimes are a good defensive team, sometimes aren't. We saw them really get it going last week against the Saints, and that was on the road, but now they're at home, and I think they have a good offensive game at home here. Carolina, horrible on both ends. I don't see how they score much at all in this one. Denver has been the best defensive red zone team in football so far this year, and they've been great against the pass. If Carolina somehow does make it down to the red zone at points in this game, they're going to have to settle for a ton of field goals. This is another one where I'm a little bit scared about a backdoor cover, especially if the backups come in, but I'm going to reluctantly take the Broncos -9.
Yeah, I'm also going to take Broncos -9. Looking at the numbers, a huge majority of the people are on the Broncos -9, which is kind of concerning. I just don't trust the Panthers on both sides of the ball at all. I don't think they'll be able to score in the Broncos defense, which has been one of the best all season. Against the pass, they're only giving up 170 passing yards per game, which is very good. They can stop the run. The Panthers could get Jonathan Brooks in his debut this week, but I just don't see them being able to move the ball at all. And with the Broncos offense being up and down all season, they seem to be able to move the ball on teams that are bad defensively. And this Panthers team is not good defensively, one of the worst. So I think the Broncos are going to be able to score. This game's in Denver, so they have the altitude advantage. And yeah, I just don't trust the Panthers at all right now. So I'm going to have to go Broncos -9 as well.
Okay, moving on here to Bears at Commanders, the battle of possibly the number one and number two overall picks, but we do not know. This game is very hard to judge without Jaden Daniels, but with the Bears favored, I'm going to assume Daniels won't play in this game. Daniels himself has been amazing this year, but I don't think his supporting cast around him is good enough to plug and play a quarterback. Mariota was great last week. He was my stud of the week, but Carolina's defense is so horrible that you have to judge that on a curve. The Bears should be able to fluster Mariota early and often and get to him early and often. The Commanders' defense has been the shock of the season so far, but the Bears are coming off a bye. They should be ready to go. They should have a plan for this game. They've been prepping for 2 weeks now after they went to London. The Commanders' pass rush has to get home to Caleb Williams for them to win this one. They definitely can, but without Jonathan Allen, I'm not going to put my money on that. So I'm going to take the Bears minus 2.5, and I believe it'll probably be Mariota they play against.
Yeah, and that's basically the reason. I think if Jaden Daniels play is going to play, this line's going to move dramatically.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to just pick Bears minus 2.5 as well. Because if he doesn't play, I can easily see the Bears covering 2.5 points. Jaden Daniels obviously has that rib injury from last week. That is why he's questionable. The Bears defense has been solid all season. If they get to go up against a guy like Marcus Mariota, I think they could dominate. Sweat getting a chance at I guess you could say, revenge game against his old team. I like the Bears with Marcus Mariota out there. I'd like to see the number one versus number two picks. That'd be great. For the Bears, I think they really just need to continue. We've seen their offense get more and more successful over the weeks when they're getting the ball to DeAndre Swift. When he can get the ball in open field, he's been very good for them. Just continue to get the ball to your playmakers, him, DJ Moore. We saw them in their last game in London get Keenan Allen more involved. That's been big. We haven't seen much Romo Dunze since the Colts game, but just get the ball to your guys, and Caleb Williams will be able to pass on this Commanders defense. So I'll go with Bears minus 2.5 as of now.
Okay, moving on here to Cowboys at 49ers. I will start by giving a little apology to Deebo Samuel, who now has pneumonia, apparently, is his sickness, water in his lungs. I still believe if you're sick enough to not play, don't tell people you're playing and remain active. But regardless, pneumonia is a serious sickness, and I hope he gets better. I don't know if he'll play in this game. Maybe he will, maybe he will not, but it's Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys are coming off a bye to play a beat up 49ers team. The 49ers defense has dominated against the run this year, and the Cowboys are a horrible run defense. And on the flip side, the Cowboys have given up a ton of rushing yards. And of course, the 49ers are a great running team. That should make it a lot easier for Purdy and the 49ers being able to run the ball a lot better. They weren't able to run it against the Chiefs last week. Purdy is not good when the 49ers cannot run the ball. We saw it last week. He should be a lot better versus unit here. Michael Parsons' status is still up in the air. We don't know if he will play or not in this game, but just like the Lions are a nightmare matchup for Dallas with being able to stop the run and run the ball, San Francisco is very similar in those categories, and we saw what happened when Dallas played the Lions. It's just another horrible matchup, in my opinion, for the Cowboys. And of course, they have a huge coaching disadvantage with McCarthy versus Shanahan. So I'm going to take the 49ers at home favorites at -4.
Yeah, the Cowboys defense this season has not been good at all, giving up 28 points per game, the second most in the NFL. They're very bad against the run, 143.2 yards per game. I think the Niners are going to have a big day running the football with Jordan Mason. Most likely Christian McCaffrey will not play this week, but I guess he could potentially play next week. Brock Purdy struggled last week in the pass game. Shanahan's going to most likely want to get an emphasis on running the ball and calming Brock Purdy down. Deebo Samuel, if he's good to go, will be big for the run game as well. You could put him in as a running back with Jordan Mason as well. I just don't. I think, like you said, I think this is a nightmare matchup for the Cowboys as they continue to kind of free fall into a couple losses here. I think the Cowboys will be able to score some points on the Niners, but I think the Niners are going to control time of possession. We saw this game last year. The Niners dominated. They face each other over 3 times in the past 34 months. The Niners have won all 3 meetings, and the Cowboys have averaged only 13. So I like the Niners in this one.
Okay, finishing off here with our 19th NFL game we're talking about today, the Giants at Steelers Monday Night Football. The Giants offense has come back to earth since losing Thomas. It's going to be a really tough game for them here against the Steelers pass rush and defense that is just phenomenal. The Steelers and Russ look good on Sunday Night Football, but like I said, I'm not yet convinced. The Giants pass defense and pass rush have both been special this year. They've both been top units, but they have not stopped the run very well. This could be a third straight good game for Najee. He was great last week. He was great the week before. You'd love to see him finally hit his stride after a really tough past year and a half for him. Been saying it all year. Teams that do not run it well or stop the run will struggle with Pitt. And the Giants are that team right now. They ran it really well to start the year, but since losing Thomas, they haven't ran it well and they don't stop the run very well. The Steelers are a tough team to beat at home in prime time. I despise this line. This might be my least favorite line of the week. And 3 weeks ago, I would have taken the Giants plus 6.5. But at this point, I have to take the Steelers minus 6.5.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way. Giants offense has taken a step back in the last couple of weeks. This is a road game for the Giants, which is better for them. For their offense, especially. Daniel Jones is just terrible at home. The Giants have been bad against the run, giving up 138.1 yards per game rushing, like you said. They can stop the pass. Brian Burns, the pass rush with Dexter Lawrence has been phenomenal. But I just like the Steelers. I think this is a great matchup for them. I think Najee Harrison, Warren, get them the ball, let them wear down the defense, and then let Russ cook a little bit. TJ Watt going against this Giants O line, Alex Highsmith as well. They looked very good last week. I think that could be another big factor this week. I think they're going to be pressuring Daniel Jones all game. I think the Steelers are going to dominate another primetime game back to back weeks at home, which is I don't know how often that happens, but can't be too often. So I got the Steelers minus 6.5.
Okay, moving on to our best bets here for week 8. It is your turn to go first, so you can start us off with your first best bet.
Um, yeah, there's not too many I like here, so this is gonna be rough. I guess for my first best bet, I'll go with Falcons minus 2.5. We saw them look very, very good passing the ball in the Buccaneers defense. The Buccaneers defense struggled again to stop the pass. I think it's going to continue. The Buccaneers have lost Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. They're going to have to find new ways to score. I expect them to run the ball a lot, but I don't think that'll be enough to cover 2.5 points.
Okay, my first one, I'm going to go with the Packers minus 4.5. Like I said, I think they match up very well in this game. The ball is going to be in Jordan Love's hands a ton, and I think he gets it done. The Jags are coming from London. We know their secondary is beat, and I do not trust the Jags offense when they can't run the ball, and Green Bay's been so great against the run. So I'm going to take the Packers minus 4 for my first best bet.
For my second best bet, I'm gonna go. Hmm. I think I might just stick with the trend, and I've done it the last 2 weeks. I'll do it again. They're definitely due to not cover, but I'll go with Ravens minus 9.5 against the Browns. I don't know how the Browns really are going to score the ball very often in this game with Jameis. The Ravens have, they're going to have to pass the ball all over them. Jameis is coming in, so maybe it's a chance to catch him in a trap, but I just think the Ravens are going to score a lot of points, and so I'll go with Ravens minus 9.5.
Okay, my next one. This is maybe my most confident pick of the week, which means it's probably a guaranteed loser, but I'm going to take the Cardinals Dolphins under 46.5. I think this is way too high of a line for this game. You get Tua in his first game back, and I don't think he's going to be phenomenal, but I think he'll do enough to get his team the win. The Cardinals, on the other hand, they're not a great offensive team. They don't pass it too well, and Miami is such a good pass defense. They're going to run the ball a ton. They're going to drain a ton of clock, and even if they do score, I think it's going to be in a slow fashion. I thought this game for sure the over under would be more towards like 40, 41, 39, but you get it at 46.5 here. I really, really like the under in that game.
For my last best bet, I'm also going to go with an under. I'm going to go with Saints and Chargers under 39.5. I think this is going to be a very low scoring game. I think it's just going to be a lot of J.K. Dobbins running the ball. I don't see how the Saints are going to score really at all in this game. So I'm going to go Chargers, Saints under 39.5.
Yeah, those were my two total picks that I had on my options here. But my last one is going to be the Lions minus 11. I keep taking them. The Lions have been a covering machine. They're 5-1 against the spread. If they scored just one touchdown or maybe two touchdowns in the red zone against Tampa Bay, they'd be 6-0 against the spread. They're a covering machine. They like to blow teams out. The Titans, although their defense has been good at times, the Lions offense is rolling. They're going to be able to run all over this Titans team. And like I said, I could see this being a game where the Titans score like anywhere from 3 to 10 points. So I like the Lions to put up at least 30. So give me the Lions minus 11 as my final best bet. And that will about do it for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. We will be back on Monday to recap all of the games from this week up until Sunday Night Football. And then a week from today, we will do the same thing as we did this week. We'll recap this past week in college football and the few games we missed from Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football, and then get you ready for week 9 of the NFL season. So thank you, everybody, for watching. If you got this far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit all the links in our description for TikTok, Spotify, and all that good stuff. And we'll see everybody in the next one.